Tensions between Tehran and Washington have taken a new rhetorical turn after a senior aide to Iran's supreme leader publicly referenced the Jeffrey Epstein scandal while criticizing the United States political establishment. The remarks, delivered during a televised discussion in Iran, immediately drew international attention, not because of any new evidence presented, but because of the symbolism behind invoking one of America's most controversial and politically sensitive cases. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei remains the supreme leader of Iran, the country's highest authority on political and strategic matters. Statements from his inner circle are rarely accidental. Observers across the region and in Western capitals often interpret such comments as carefully calibrated signals. In this instance, the aide's reference to Epstein appeared to go beyond routine criticism of US foreign policy. It seemed designed to suggest that Iran possesses information, or at least is willing to amplify narratives that could embarrass powerful figures in Washington. Jeffrey Epstein, a financier whose associations with high-profile politicians and business leaders drew global scrutiny, was found unresponsive in a New York detention facility in 2019 while awaiting trial on serious charges. The circumstances surrounding his case have fueled years of speculation, political debate and public distrust within the United States. Although multiple official investigations concluded there was no evidence of foul play, the case continues to resonate deeply in American political discourse. By referencing Epstein, the Iranian official appeared to tap directly into that unresolved public suspicion. According to regional analysts, the message may not have been about presenting new proof. Instead, it may have been about reminding American audiences of unresolved controversies within their own system. Iran and the United States have had no formal diplomatic relations since 1979. Over decades, their rivalry has included economic sanctions, regional competition, military tensions, and information campaigns. Both sides frequently accuse the other of hypocrisy, human rights violations, and interference in global affairs. What makes the recent comment notable is its focus on alleged misconduct within the American elite, rather than on traditional geopolitical grievances. Political communication experts note that referencing Epstein is a calculated move. The case has become shorthand for elite privilege, institutional failure, and hidden networks of influence. By invoking it, Tehran may be attempting to shift the narrative away from scrutiny of Iran's own policies and toward perceived weaknesses within the US system. The timing of the remarks also matters. Relations between Washington and Tehran remain strained over sanctions, regional security issues, and Iran's nuclear program. Diplomatic channels exist indirectly, but trust remains low. In such an environment, words can carry strategic weight. Some Western analysts view the statement as psychological messaging. They argue that Tehran may be signaling that it is prepared to escalate in the information domain if pressure continues. Others see it as primarily rhetorical, designed for domestic audiences in Iran, where criticism of the United States often plays well politically. Iranian officials have long portrayed the United States as morally inconsistent, criticizing Washington for lecturing other nations while grappling with its own internal controversies. By referencing Epstein, the aide reinforced that narrative. He suggested that Western governments frequently conceal uncomfortable truths while demanding transparency from others. However, there is no public evidence that Iran possesses undisclosed material connected to the Epstein case. US authorities have repeatedly stated that investigations into Epstein's activities and his network were conducted according to established legal procedures. Still, in the age of social media and global information flows, perception often matters as much as proof. The reaction in Washington has been measured. Officials have not formally responded in detail, likely to avoid amplifying the remark. Analysts note that responding directly could lend credibility to what may have been intended as a provocative but symbolic statement. In the broader geopolitical context, information has become a powerful tool. Nations increasingly engage not only in military or economic competition, but also in narrative competition. Allegations, insinuations, and references to scandals can serve as instruments of influence. Iran has invested heavily in media and communication platforms aimed at international audiences. These channels often highlight controversies within Western societies, presenting them as evidence of systemic flaws. By contrast, US officials frequently emphasize issues related to governance, rights, and regional activities in Iran. The reference to Epstein, therefore, fits within a long-standing pattern. It reflects an attempt to question the moral authority of Washington at a time when the United States continues to apply pressure on Tehran through sanctions and diplomatic isolation. Regional observers suggest that the comment may also be aimed at audiences beyond the United States. In parts of the Middle East, skepticism toward Western political systems runs deep. By highlighting scandals involving prominent American figures, Iranian officials may seek to strengthen their narrative that global power structures are unequal and selectively enforced. Despite the rhetorical escalation, there are no signs that the statement signals an immediate policy shift. Diplomatic intermediaries continue to explore limited avenues for de-escalation on certain issues. Economic realities within Iran, including inflation and currency pressures, also constrain the scope of confrontation. Within the United States, the Epstein case continues to be discussed across the political spectrum. Some members of Congress have called for additional transparency regarding documents connected to the investigation. Others argue that the legal process has already addressed the matter as far as possible. The subject remains sensitive and politically charged. International law experts caution against conflating rhetoric with action. They note that governments often use symbolic references as leverage in negotiations or as part of strategic messaging. The absence of concrete evidence accompanying the Iranian aid statement suggests that the goal may be influence rather than exposure. At the same time, the episode highlights how deeply interconnected domestic controversies and international politics have become. A case rooted in American legal proceedings has now entered the language of geopolitical rivalry. Iran's leadership has consistently framed its disputes with Washington as ideological as well as strategic. The supreme leader has often characterized U.S. policies as driven by power interests rather than principles. References to internal American scandals reinforce that narrative. For Washington, the challenge lies in maintaining focus on policy objectives without being drawn into rhetorical exchanges. U.S. administrations, regardless of party, have typically sought to avoid legitimizing accusations that lack substantiation. Silence in such cases can be a strategic choice. Analysts in Europe describe the development as part of a broader information contest. They note that Russia, China, and other governments have also highlighted Western controversies in their communications. The strategy is not necessarily to prove wrongdoing, but to amplify doubt. The long-term impact of the Iranian aide remark remains uncertain. It may fade quickly from headlines, overtaken by other developments in a volatile region. Alternatively, it could resurface if tensions intensify and both sides escalate their messaging. Public opinion plays a role as well. In Iran, skepticism toward U.S. policy is widespread, shaped by decades of sanctions and political disputes. In the United States, views on Iran are often influenced by concerns over regional stability and nuclear issues. Messaging on both sides is crafted with these domestic audiences in mind. Strategists point out that invoking scandals carries risks. If claims are perceived as exaggerated or unsubstantiated, they can undermine credibility. Conversely, even unproven allegations can gain traction if they align with existing narratives. The Epstein case, with its unresolved public questions and high-profile connections, provides fertile ground for such narratives. Its mention in the context of US-Iran tensions underscores how symbolic events can transcend borders. Diplomatic observers emphasize that substantive policy discussions, whether on sanctions relief, regional security, or nuclear safeguards, require sustained engagement. Rhetorical exchanges may capture headlines, but they rarely resolve underlying disputes. Still, the power of suggestion should not be underestimated. In an era defined by rapid information sharing, a single remark can travel globally within minutes. Governments are aware of this dynamic and increasingly incorporate it into their strategies. Iran's political establishment operates within a framework where public messaging is closely aligned with strategic objectives. Comments from senior aides are typically coordinated. This suggests that the reference to Epstein was deliberate rather than incidental. For the United States, the episode serves as a reminder that domestic controversies can become tools in international competition. Transparency and institutional resilience are often cited by U.S. officials as strengths. Critics argue that unresolved questions can weaken that narrative. As tensions persist, both Tehran and Washington continue to navigate a complex landscape. Economic pressures, regional alliances and global power shifts all influence their calculations. The immediate future will likely see continued rhetorical sparring alongside cautious diplomatic manoeuvring. Whether the Epstein reference marks the beginning of a broader information campaign or remains a one-time remark will depend on how events unfold. In the end, the episode illustrates the evolving nature of geopolitical rivalry. It is no longer confined to traditional battlegrounds of territory or trade. It now includes narratives, perceptions, and the strategic use of controversy. For ordinary citizens in both countries, such exchanges may feel distant from daily concerns, yet they shape the broader climate in which policies are formed and relations evolve. As of now, no new evidence has emerged to substantiate the implications suggested by the Iranian aide. The statement stands as a provocative example of how historical scandals can be repurposed in contemporary disputes. The story continues to develop within a wider context of strained relations, shifting alliances and ongoing negotiations. Whether it ultimately influences diplomatic trajectories or fades into the background remains to be seen. What is clear is that in modern geopolitics, information itself has become a central arena. And in that arena, even a single reference can carry strategic weight far beyond its immediate words.